So, hello everyone. Hello, Mark. My guest today is Mark Craddock, who is the author of the most spectacular usage of Worldly mapping that I have seen so far. And basically, each of my workshops refers to what Mark did as a stellar use of strategy. But to not spoil the future, I will let the Mark to tell the story himself. So, Mark, what was the challenge that you were experiencing?
So I was at the United Nations, or specifically the United Nations Statistics Division, and they assemble all the chief statisticians globally. So there's 194, I think it is, every year in March in New York in the headquarters. And I think it was about 5 years ago they decided they needed to make themselves kind of or kind of the market was being disrupted by the private sector, producing statistics, using big data. They're producing them, efficiently, quickly. They're not official statistics because they don't get published by the official offices, but they were producing kind of some remarkable insight from the use of big data. So the United Nations Statistical Commission, which is the group of all the chief statisticians around the world, they agreed to set up a working group to look at big data to use to create official statistics. So that was about maybe 6-7 years ago now. I got involved 3 years ago, and the program, we're still running. It was, but it was, there was lots of talk. There wasn't much action. And working with Heather Savary from ONS, the deputy director there, we implemented a platform for big data with the view that the platform will be used to help educate, train, knowledge, share, collaboration of the users across the statistical community to help them understand and use big data to create official statistics, along with supporting the Sustainable Development Goals as well. So I don't know if you're aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, but there's 17 huge goals that all members of the UN have signed up for. And, I think number one is like remove poverty from the world. Yeah. So these are targets that are set by 2013 with UN. So the official statistic offices globally formally report on the status of each country where they are with the SDGs. So the platform must be used for education, training, knowledge, sharing around algorithms, methodologies, around big data and official statistics.
I get this, but if I recall correctly, there was also something with funding, right? Because you had no budget on your own, and you had to ask all the participating.
So I don't think people really understand. So the UN is a big organization. There's many parts of the UN, and they do compete with each other, just like large enterprises. There is a handbook produced out of Statistics New Zealand that describes the UN, and it's 450 pages. Yeah. Just to get an example. But the UN, I think the best quote is a guy, Andrew Zolli from Planet Labs, the geospatial company. And he said, the UN is the world's largest broke organization, right? They do not have any money, right? They cannot do things. And when they do have money, they're crippled by bureaucracy, procurement. They couldn't do nothing. We struggled. We were using Zendesk, for example, for the help desk for the platform. And the UN in New York, after 6 months, could not procure a $200, access to Zendesk. It's absolutely, it's really difficult for them to do stuff. They're very good at, organizing and collaborating and joining people up and getting people to kind of make decisions and, kind of resolve conflict and stuff. But when it comes to like delivery capability, it's limited, say, yeah.
So that bit of context probably allows me and potential viewers to anticipate the effort that you have put into the building the platform. You've used Worldly mapping. What was the result? What was the end state of using the Worldly map? What was the solution to the problem you were facing?
So you've got so because it's the UN, they build a working group. So there's 46 members of the working group. So you've got 46 representatives from around the world, from different countries, developed, the Pacific Islands, Africa, every continent, and trying to get them to agree and understand what a platform is to start with. What is a platform and a platform business model? Because it wasn't just a technical platform we were building; it was a new business to run the platform, and that had to be a platform business model.
Okay.
So using to try and explain it, but using kind of WardleyMapping to explain, where we are, what we're going to do. And, some people say, well, we can't use cloud. Some are saying, well, why aren't we using cloud? And there's kind of different opinions globally. But by putting the components of the platform onto a map and explaining where they were in the cycle, in the phases, that helped explain to people why we were using cloud, why we were going to look at custom building some work around data and data security and kind of the kind of data catalog side of it. And this kind of helped us get our strategy agreed. And at the fundamental core of the strategy was like the ILC model. So when you've got there's a huge amount of work going on across all the stats offices globally. There's 194 of them. They're all well funded. Most of them are well funded, especially the developed countries. And they've got a huge amount of staff. There's over 100,000 staff globally, and there's a lot. There's a lot of tech. Some of them could be considered to be tech organisations really. So if you look at Stats Canada, I think there's 5,000 staff, but there's 1,500 tech people. Yeah, so it's really a technical organisation. So we used the Wardley map and we used the ILC model as a strategy. So we would build a platform to host data, let people collaborate, share, and publish algorithms and methodologies, and we would identify the ones which were used the most or were being used by maybe more than one country or several countries, and then we would take those and we would build them into the platform as a core service. And there, the kind of platform model and the architecture would, that gives us new services. We leverage that, and then we build new services on top of it. And that was the strategy for the platform to make it sustainable. Because the challenge about a lot of projects that are run by the UN and associated with the private sector as well is they get funding for maybe 2 years and then they just die. Yeah, they just die. Yeah. And they're never sustainable. So we had to come up with the business model and the architecture to allow the platform to be sustainable. And the only way we could really come up with that was based around the ILC, innovate, leverage, commoditize, where we let all the stats offices innovate on the platform, and then we basically just steal the best stuff, and then we commoditize it and we make it available to all the stats offices. So one of the early successes it was around, and one of it was started off as a proof that we could stream. We weren't going to look at. So the stats office today, they'll go and copy data and they'll make a copy of it, then they'll work on it, which is it's kind of crazy really in some ways, and it's really difficult to do that because people don't want you holding copies of your data. So as part of the streaming, so we're looking at data streaming, and they're doing analytics on the data as it comes in. Talking to Ivo Havigna, who's the deputy director at UNSD, he looks after economic statistics globally, so he compiles them all globally for the for the UN. And he said back in 2008, when we had the economic crash, the bank one, at the time, they didn't know this, but cargo trade just dived. It just dived, but they didn't know why. They could see this. They could see the figures diving, but they didn't know why. But then eventually they realised it was related to the financial crisis, and because of that, now they know cargo. And if 70% of trade globally is done by ships and cargo, so if that trade drops, that means people are less buying less stuff. There's something wrong with the economy. So it's an indicator of a pending doom. Yeah. So based on that conversation with Ivo in a pub. We were looking at where can we get some data, and we identified you can get so all ships over a certain size by law have to broadcast the location, movement, name, etc. It's called AIS data, and there's several companies. So looking at this, are we going to build our own AIS capture? Are we going to capture this data, deploy thousands of radio receivers around the world, or are we just going to use one of the commodity services that are already out there? Yeah. So we looked at several AIS providers. Some wanted to work with a UN and support the calls. So we set up a data streaming platform. So we were streaming in, I think it's 80 million records a day into the platform, and this is capturing you can see all the ship movements globally, and there was a platform that could actually analyze and process that data at that kind of capacity, which was based on open source software. This was being used by the UK. So the UK built a fast economic indicator on it, so it's published on the ONS website. And actually, based on that project, and when the COVID kicked in, they're using the same platform to analyze ship movements, and they can see the impact on trade. And originally, back in 2008, when it took ONS 6 weeks to produce official figures to say, we're doomed. Yeah, the economy's crashed. We're started. And each week of that, it took them to make publish that data, cost the UK economy 1 billion. Right, so it cost the economy 12 billion by not being able to produce those figures for 12 weeks. Yeah, over 12 weeks. It took them 12 weeks to publish figures. It cost us $1 billion each week, so it was $12 billion to the UK economy. Now, with a new platform, on the UN Global Platform and access to the data, those reports were produced over the weekend. All right. So that meant the Cabinet Office, the Bank of England, and other organisations could act immediately and start implementing policies to make decisions, because they knew it was coming. Yeah, they knew, they could see there was less ship movement. They could see the impact of it. They could see the impact of trade coming out of China. They could see the ships weren't coming. They weren't, they couldn't, or they wouldn't, or they weren't moving. And that was built into the policy. So I'm pretty confident to say I've saved the UK economy at least 12 billion. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really impressive. One more thing, because if I recall correctly, during one of the map camps, you have delivered a very famous line, which is like, we did nothing for 18 or 16 months, and here it is. And it was related to re-implementing multi-cloud support in the platform. Could you tell us a couple of words about that?
Yeah, so as part of the map we did, we identified the components we needed. So we needed cloud infrastructure. We looked at Kubernetes, and we looked at data components, data warehousing, analytics, visualization, and all these different components. And basically, you could see that Kubernetes was in the kind of product phase and just getting into the kind of commodity phase. And if you looked, you could look at Amazon. So because it's the UN, we use 4 cloud providers: Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Alibaba. Yeah, and you can see they all were going to have a commodity service for Kubernetes, and we wasn't ready yet. But you could see the indicators and the kind of noise and information about it. So we didn't do it. Yeah, we didn't build a Kubernetes infrastructure. Even though there was lots of pressure from certain organizations, so we should build Kubernetes. We need to do it. So no, but let's not do it. And it was about $1 million to build a Kubernetes infrastructure to support the platform, but we didn't do it. And about a year later, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Alibaba, they all released their Kubernetes services, and we can use that as needed. So by not doing that, we saved $1 million. And not only that, this you can also, within the map, because you can say, right, and I've got some other examples of this. So we would have built our own custom Kubernetes stack based on some kind of like products, and that would have cost $1 million. And then you've got over here you've got your commodity service now, which you'd want to move to at some point. So really, you've spent $1 million there, and you probably need to spend another $1 million to move over. And you could say that's $2 million of technical debt if you really wanted to. Yeah. So you could kind of go back to, look, we didn't do this, and then we didn't have to do that. So not only did we save $1 million of not building it, but we probably saved another $1 million of not having to migrate to a different platform as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So this is actually what I try to teach people all the time, that the no action and waiting for the market to catch up with the requirements is usually a quite sensible thing to do.
Yeah, Mark, and we wouldn't have been able to build it in a year anyway. We would have probably been halfway through, and then Amazon, Microsoft, Google would have went, hey, ta-da, and we'd have went, oh no, what do we do? Yeah.
I can understand that. Mark, do you have any map that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, we've got tons of maps. So we did the the original platform map. We did maps on privacy enhancing techniques. We did maps on satellite, mobile phone data, satellite data. We've got quite a lot actually. I don't know how to do it here, but I think what we did actually, we just published a lot of it just in the open, a lot of the maps. Yeah.
Okay, so I will perhaps look for them, and I will attach the links in that case. If anyone
I can send you a link, but basically there's tons of maps that have been published in the open.
Yeah.
Mainly for for challenge and feedback. And I think that's, sometimes that's without people understanding Worldy maps, it's difficult for them to challenge and understand what. So we had to do some workshops with people to kind of give them a bit of intro to Worldy maps before they were able to contribute to Worldy maps.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mark, thank you so much for this interview. I think it will be extremely helpful. Thanks.
All right. Okay.
The links should be available in the video description. If you've used WardleyMapping in a similar way as we've discussed in this interview or in the previous ones, I would be more than happy to record an interview with you. Drop me a line. Cheers!